India's coal sector has undergone a significant transformation in the past few years. So shortages have transformed into surplus. But does that mean that the future of old king coal is bright in this country, or would it die a slow death as is happening in other countries globally? These questions are part of our panel discussion today with an eminent set of panelists that includes Kuljit Singh from EY, Shiva from ThyssenKrupp, Sunil Singh from Indian Captive Power Producers Association, and Vivek Bhardwaj, a Joint Secretary in the Coal Ministry. The larger question that I would always like to begin such a discussion with is what has changed in the past, let's say, 2-3 years. Certainly, the situation has changed from shortages as high as 100 million ton and more to today we are talking about exports. So what has changed? Has something really changed on ground, or is it just a that's a perspective I would like to begin with Kuljit giving us on, because as an independent expert, he has looked at the sector for a lot of years, I'm sure. And I remember, Kuljit, when I used to talk to you earlier, you used to say that, there is, the sector is kind of losing its charm. Then I'm talking about a few years ago. And that's because a lot of, dirt is there in the sector. But would you still say the same thing?
No, definitely the sector has improved, and I guess we are now reaching the normal circumstance, because if you really see, you go back maybe more than 5 years, 10 years ago, in India coal was never a problem. Coal India used to always generate sufficient amount of coal. There used to be always a mild surplus, so we actually reached a normal situation which was already there. Having said that, in the current circumstance, I think what has changed is that environment clearances, land acquisitions, and that's relentless pursuit by the Ministry of Coal, chasing Coal India, chasing all its subsidiary, ensuring that the targets are met, doing periodic reviews. I think that has increased substantially. Having said that, I think there are still a couple of red flags which are there. One is that the coal GCV seems to have dropped, and that has been the uniform experience of a large number of IPPs who are being supplied coal. The second thing is that the imported coal which is being used, the volumes still remain very, very high as compared to historical trends. So that needs to come down. It hasn't come down substantially as yet. And I think the third thing which is a red flag in the sector is that the auctions of coal block haven't really panned out as was earlier thought by the government. So these are the three red flags which remain. But overall, definitely from an IPP perspective, user perspective, the coal situation has definitely improved, and all credit goes to the present government.
Mr. Bhardwaj, I would like to come to you here. He talked about how rising imports is something that the government is working on. I think there was a statement also by the minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, a day or two before, talking about how we want to replace that entire imported coal-based capacity with kind of increased domestic coal use, making them fit for that. What is being done in the ministry to address this issue and the others that he talked about?
See, the first thing is that talking in aggregate terms really doesn't help. Okay. Now let us subdivide this import requirement of the country into three parts. Okay. One is of coking coal, where we've traditionally had a deficit. So we've been importers of coking coal for a long time. That is, a requirement which is not going to end tomorrow. Two, we have power plants on the coast which were based on imported coal. So their boilers are designed for only imported coal. They will continue to use imported coal. So it is only the third category of thermal power plants which was using imported coal as a substitute for domestic coal because of its scarcity, which we can actually do something about. Okay. And you would be happy to know that last year there has been a drop of 23,000 crore rupees in the import bill. Okay. That's tremendous. Okay. What we are also planning to do is to map out which are these industries which still continue, maybe power and non-power also, which continue to import coal. We plan to contact each one of these industries and find out their requirements and how we can meet them. Let me also add to what Kuljit said about the way that the auctions have panned out. I think there is a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation in the industry about this.
There is a view that it's been slow. A lot of blocks have been auctioned, but production is not really picking up.
Let me just tell you the facts. So there were 17 coal mines which were auctioned in the first round.
Okay.
These were Schedule 2 coal mines. Out of these 17 coal mines, 1 we could not issue the vesting order because of a court stay, which was lifted just in July. So that leaves us with 16 mines. Out of these 16 mines, 10 are operational. So, you know, this understanding that they have not panned out the way they were supposed to is not quite true. Again, these Schedule 3 coal mines which are not operational, these Schedule 3 coal mines, many of them are ahead of schedule. In fact, one of them has started operating already. We expected them to start production 2 years hence. So, you know, the facts speak otherwise.
And these producing mines, you know, the mines which have started production now, what is the kind of you know, total output that is coming?
22 million tons
at the moment. Can you also brief us on what, you know, going ahead, what is the larger target that the government is working on in terms of, you know, from captive output, you know, what is the kind of output?
You see, once uncertainty which these captive coal mines are facing is that of matters which are sub judice. Now, many of the public sector mines, the prior allotee has gone to court, and in many places there have been favorable orders. In some cases, there have not been favorable orders. So those state governments have in turn gone to the Supreme Court. So therefore, it is very tough to give you, you know, a precise estimate of what would be the production.
But talking about targets, you know, we are working on Coal India's production target of 1 billion ton by 2020. And of late, there have been news reports saying that that may not be achieved. We are, you know, the target is, you know, maybe a little ambitious because the ministry himself, you know, itself may have asked a lot of subsidiaries of Coal India to cut down on production. What is really happening? What is the situation, ground situation like?
See, production can only be a function of what is sold.
Okay.
In fact, I think this country should appreciate Coal India, because in a time like this, when any other private company would have cut down on production to take care of, you know, the surplus situation and also better price realization, which would obviously be a consequence of lower production, this company has gone on producing. You compare it with other coal companies of the world. The largest coal company of the world has gone bankrupt.
Okay.
In South Africa, coal companies are not only closing down, they are also laying off workers.
But even Coal India's case, I think in the first half of the current fiscal, there has been a slight dip in sales, although the production is a little, you know, marginally up.
On the other hand, the latest figures show that there has been a minor tick in offtake.
Oh, really?
Upwards.
Okay.
It's only 0.2%, but there is.
But there is. Sunil, you want to say something?
In the month of August.
In the month of
I
August.
want to say one thing, you know, first, you know, what government is doing. I hail the transparency which is there, but there are certain missing links which are there, you know. Ultimately, Government of India, Coal India, or Ministry of Coal, they don't exist in vacuum, you know. Ultimately, government has got a holistic plan and they should support it. At present, if you see, Make in India, or if you talk about the comparative advantage of Indian economy, it is consumption. And if the consumption has to be driven by the Indian industry, India will stand tall. But what is happening in that field, you know, we are not able to deliver what is required by the industry.
So you are saying that the demand itself has come down.
I'll come to you. And the reason being is that, you know, we are losing steam with China. One of the major reasons which, you know, Government of India should recognize that on a purchasing parity, power parity, you know, on a purchasing parity basis, we are at least 3 to 4 times expensive than China, you know.
Okay.
And what is happening in that process of auctioning, I still say, you know, that the process is very transparent. Coal India or indirectly Government of India, it is moving towards profiteering. Profit is a good word, but profiteering, you know, somehow or other, at the end of the day, you should see, as I said, holistically where we are standing, you know. I can't produce steel today. I'm from a captive power producer association. At the end of the day, I need energy to produce my steel and aluminum.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
So you are saying you're not getting enough coal. Is that what you're saying?
Not getting the coal. The pricing of the coal with the wage which is happening, you know, as I said with China on a purchasing power parity, we are at least 3 times expensive. And year on year, if you see, every year government is coming with some cess or other, you know. Still,
the comparison with China is not always a very.
Then the point is, I say you have to see
comparison.
holistically, you know, where do we stand? At the end of the day, coal has to support something. You know, in spite of the fact, as Sir said, the Government of India is producing and ramping up, you know, still the evacuation is not going to take place. And tomorrow you talk about a billion ton, you know, if the market is not there, everything will be in jeopardy, you know.
See, I was told, let's say 6 months back by the rail ministry that there is, a huge amount of, stocks that is lying at the pit head and at the rail heads also, which went to the extent of, taking everything together, 70, 80 million ton or more. Now that's quite an alarming situation. If that was the case, and I don't know, maybe it has been corrected now. So what is the current situation of stocks?
One thing is, of course, there that if
Because demand
profiteering,
was down.
if profiteering is a bad word for government, profiteering is a worse word for private. So this is something which you need to keep in mind.
Okay.
The other thing is that I think this should be celebrated. When we lived in a situation of shortages,
Yeah.
that was one big story.
Yes. Yeah.
Now that we are in a position of surplus, that is again one big story. But I think this is a story which should be celebrated of this industry, reaching a situation where we can boast of a surplus.
How it has been transformed.
Exactly. I mean, I would recall in 2013-14, the annual growth in production was 1.3%.
Yeah.
The celebrated Hindu rate of growth was continuing in the 21st century. And now we have, production, I mean, interestingly, what happened was that 1 year's production was equal to 4 years of incremental production. Yes.
I want to slightly give a different dimension to the whole thing.
Okay.
Yes, the availability has increased, so there is more coal available. But the coal consumers have a different dilemma today. Like what Sunil said, is that what price I'm getting. If I'm able to get an imported price with a higher GCV at a lower price than what I get from Coal India, so why would I go and buy coal from Coal India,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, which means why is coal from Chile or South Africa or from Russia coming into India at a cheaper price? So we need to really look at it.
Yeah.
So are we producing the coal at the right price point?
On pricing, I would
So
ask. Okay.
cost, it's just not the pricing. You see, the
Okay.
price is directly proportional also to the cost. If your costs are higher, price is higher. So can we improve also our productivity in order to ensure that we reduce our cost and also able to reduce the price point? Today, I think the many dilemma that people have, that even if I can use Indian coal, if I can get a coal with a higher GCV, 7,000 kilocalories,
Okay.
and at a cheaper price, $30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I can
Yeah,
do that,
yeah.
why not?
Yeah.
Unemployment,
So
if
on
you
that-
see,
yeah.
unemployment is at the highest level. Industries, if you see the industrial production are coming down. Coal India's production is going up. Is Coal India a real market for the coal?
Okay.
Is it
Yeah.
determining the real factor of market? Okay.
Yeah,
No, it
okay.
is completely, a monopolistic behemoth.
Okay, yeah, we'll discuss that. But on pricing point, Kuljit, I'll have to ask you, what is the current situation when it comes to comparison of sourcing coal, a domestic situation versus imported? So suppose I'm a company based in UP and I am sourcing currently a coal from Chhattisgarh, a mine in Chhattisgarh. And now if I want to switch to imports, would it make economic sense for me, taking into account all the freight cost and everything, to let's say source it from Vizag port and all that? So how does that comparison work at the moment?
See, at this point of time, the Indian coal is cheaper than imported coal on a price to GCV basis. So I don't think the government needs to make it even more cheaper. I think it's already cheap. And without even considering the freight cost, which projects which are located inland would have to incur. I think even for a lot of the projects which are based in the coastal regions, I think today they need to really think hard whether they should be using imported vis-a-vis domestic coal. Of course, they have to keep in mind the technical parameters which are there of a project, whether the technical specs are such that they allow them to shift seamlessly between domestic and imported coal. But assuming that was allowed, I think even they will have to start thinking whether they should start using domestic coal as compared to imported coal. So no doubt about that, as far as government is concerned, that is one element on which they need not focus on, because Indian coal is already cheaper vis-a-vis imported coal.
We need to focus on is productivity, like Shiva said, and also quality. Now let me tell you what we are trying to do about that.
We have just written stories on that NTPC issue of GCV, where the power regulator has kind of disallowed
I will not get into
a part of
specific company issues or regulatory issues. I'm talking about it broadly.
Okay.
So, one very important thing which happened this year was that Coal India decided that it will sell only sized coal.
Okay.
Then we've been substantively effective with this third party sampling of coal. Thirdly, we are also trying to put up 15 more washeries
Okay.
with a capacity of 110 million tons, which are supposed to come on stream within calendar year 2017. So, that is also a focus. Once quantity is taken care of, quality will also need to be improved, because Indian coal quality is not too good. I mean, this is something
That's a
which
geographic
is
fact that
broadly
we- yeah, yeah,
accepted.
geological.
As far as productivity is concerned, again I am in agreement that productivity also needs to be enhanced. Once productivity goes up, obviously cost will also go down. Another important element of the cost is our wage bill, which is 50% of the of the total cost of production. So, that will also be have to be looked into.
On the question of productivity, I will have to ask Shiva, what are the ways in which your companies, companies like yourself, contribute in terms of, using new technologies or newer ways to, raise productivity or technologies?
Right. The technology as a lever
Yeah.
in order to enhance productivity. We are still utilizing very conventional mining methods, using the conventional equipment like shovels, drag lines, and surface miner, which are less productive because they are discontinuous in the whole methodology.
So why are we continuing with that?
So, because the continuous mining technology is still not available, and that's where the companies like ours, we are working on new technologies which will make revolutionize the whole mining technology into a continuous mining, where the productivity would be much more, and the cost of production of per ton of coal will be much cheaper. So, we believe that we should be able to bring down the cost of production by at least 20% by using the continuous mining methods.
On the technology
And
question,
also,
yeah.
like he mentioned, the wage bill, we are also looking at far more automated
Okay.
machines,
Okay.
which can actually reduce the
Yeah. Per
the
unit cost of-
intervention of the human
Okay.
people, which is the conditions in the mines are not so easy. So, if we can enable the machines to be far more the user friendly, we can actually bring down that as well.
Okay.
Can I just
Yeah, please.
pitch in here? Interestingly, like in the West, an underground mine is air conditioned.
Oh, really?
Yes. In India, we don't have a single mine which is air conditioned, because that also affects productivity. Now, Coal India is thinking of making mines
Okay.
air conditioned. I mean, you
No,
have
we are
to
known as a country where Jharia fire has been on for I don't know how many
yes.
decades.
So until and unless
we are talking about ACs.
you will
Okay.
productivity is not going to come only making the miner's life more tough. It's going to come from making his life more comfortable.
More comfortable also. But that question of technology, brings me to a very important point of Paris Climate Agreement. We have just done that. Now, what kind of an impact that would have on India's coal sector? Because we would, after making those commitments, we would want to have, an economy which consumes less and less of fossil fuel-based energy to give more output. Now, Mr. Bhardwaj, can you brief us on in what way that could impact our sector, coal sector, and what are the ways in which the government can look at this as an opportunity to intervene in the favor of clean coal technologies? Yeah.
One thing is clear, our stand in the international negotiations has been very clear. Coal will continue to remain the mainstay of our energy needs. It will not only be because of economic reasons, but also for strategic reasons, because that is what provides us energy security.
Okay.
Also, our average energy consumption per capita is very low. However, apart from that, we will ensure that the energy mix changes more towards renewables. So, that is in a nutshell our position.
So going ahead, there are good days for old king coal.
Not only just to add to what
Okay.
Vivek just mentioned, there are also technologies of firing. In the boilers,
Okay.
there are technologies of firing where you can reduce the NOx and SOx.
Okay.
So if you are able to do that, I think that's where we will be able to, that's an integrated effort of bringing in the renewable energy at the same time, making even the coal firing far more environmental friendly.
yes.
You know, if you, there are latest technologies which are evolving, you know, by way of, let's say, CFBC is one of the technologies where we can actually reduce the NOx and SOx level to a great
Shiva,
extent.
Apart from that, clean coal technologies.
Yeah.
Shiva, can you briefly compare for us, for our own benefit and for the benefit of the viewers, the kind of technology used that happens in Coal India at the moment, and how does that compare with, you know, some of the largest miners in the world in terms of clean coal technologies I'm talking about?
You mean the mining, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the mining point of view, I think.
I mean, are we still to catch up with the?
No, we are actually, you know, we are using the technology which is, as I said, mentioned, it is discontinuous technology, because the continuous technology has not evolved anywhere in the world. This is the first time we as a company, we are actually bringing in, because, you know, in the lignite, brown coal, the continuous technology, mining technology is very much in vogue for last 50 years. But these machines were not able to be deployed in the hot strata. So here you need a higher, you know, UCS, where this was not possible. Today we are now developed a machine which can actually utilize, which can be utilized for higher hard coal, also the hard overburden. So with these machines, continuous miners, and also these machines are much bigger than the existing continuous miners. So one is productivity, and also the rate of production also will be much higher with those kind of technologies.
Okay.
So we have presently launched a new product worldwide which can actually do this job pretty well.
Sunil, what is the likely impact of this use of entire, you know, technology? You know, when we talk about it, it's good, but, you know, the kind of cost implication that it could have for a company, can you brief us on that? What's your view?
As I say, hats off, you know, our productivity has increased, a lot of transparency has come, you know, but at the ground, when it comes to the industry, you know, productivity is not increasing, because as I said, you know, we don't exist in vacuum, you know, we are the part of the global system, you know, we have signed WTO, so, you know, when it comes to productivity of increasing, and as I said, Indian economics is based on consumption. The comparative advantage is consumption, and economics is always defined. The theory of economics, if we talk about, is based on comparative advantage. That consumption, you know, it's not being triggered. The reason being is that at the purchasing power parity level, we are still 3 times expensive, you know, and being from a steel sector or from aluminum sector, you know, coal is the major source of our energy. And, you know, 60% of our total cost goes towards that. But we are not able to compete with China when it comes to there, you know. Yes, government is doing by bringing anti-dumping, but these are all quick fixing method, you know, we are not becoming cost effective. So this is one thing. Secondly, as a captive power plant, you know, we find that we are the power on the tap. There were a coherent policy which was supporting it. All of a sudden, we have been put into non-regulated sector, you know. Even the ordinance says that there is no distinction between IPP and CPP. But when it comes to define it, we are considered to be market linked, that's why we are non-regulated. With the power which we produce is the same, the power which IPPs are produced, there is no difference in the nature of power, you know.
I think I need to
Intervene,
you know, clarify this, that even the courts have upheld, and I will certainly send it for Sunil's, you know, that while power is the same, even if I get it from solar power, it is the same energy. Certainly, power is the same whether you produce this for a captive purpose or for, you know, a regulated purpose, but the markets are different. And who would understand this better than Sunil?
Do you want to intervene and tell us what, you know, what is the real situation here?
I think the couple of things which are happening. I think from the, just looking at the coal sector per se, from Government of India's perspective, I think what Government of India will try to do, they will try to improve the technology. There's no doubt about that. Because I think, I don't think they can keep on discussing the same achievement of having achieved a surplus in the coal sector. I think now they'll have to move forward on that and start reforming the coal sector, which I think the government is well aware of. So from a technology front, I think a couple of indicators which we would like to see is more and more underground mining in India, because it really solves a lot of the problems which you are having in India in terms of land acquisition, environment clearance, etc. So more and more underground mining in India. Secondly, maybe some kind of a reform of Coal India. I think that's another thing which is long overdue from India's perspective. A third thing which Indian government will need to watch out for, keeping in view all the WTO commitments and all the clean coal commitments that government of India has given, I think the direction is keep on making Indian coal more and more expensive. So one is by levy of the environment cess. Then recently there was another move that you have to involve FGD units at each of the power stations, which really is very, very expensive, makes the power projects which are already facing a huge amount of financial problems. I think it just accentuates the problems for these power projects. So left to itself, Government of India will try to do that. I think what Government of India will need to watch out for are the international developments, especially in the technology front, particularly with regard to renewable energy. And there the most fundamental thing that they have to watch out for is what's happening on the storage front. Because today renewable energy is almost competitive at the generation end with conventional energy. Where it gets beaten pretty drastically is when it comes to transmission and distribution, because a renewable energy project can operate maybe at 20% capacity levels, whereas a thermal power project operates at 90% levels. So when you are at the generating station, that's fine. The moment you start discussing transmission and distribution, it would mean that for the same renewable energy project, you have to set up a capacity which is 5 times the number in transmission as well as distribution. So when you add that cost, suddenly renewable energy becomes very, very unattractive. But if you get storage, the moment that happens on a viable scale, you will suddenly find that coal will completely fall out of favor. And all the plans that we have for 1.5 billion ton of capacity by 2020 will no longer be needed.
Mr. Bhadwaj, you want to comment on that?
I totally agree with them. We are well aware of this, and we are tracking the developments.
Okay, and working
and
on.
we are confident
okay.
of being able to handle that also. We handled a lot in the past. So.
He has made a very important point.
Okay.
And we are very confident that by 2020, solar houses will become a reality also. Because as he was talking about, the battery as well as storage, and it is expected, and if we bring Moore's law into account, the way in which the prices are falling down, by 2020 it will become a reality.
I think I would like to kind of end this discussion by asking all of you very briefly a question which all of you will have to answer. What is the future of coal in India? Are we looking at like what is happening globally? Coal is the old king coal is dying a slow death. Do you think that is a scenario that we can imagine in this country also anytime soon? And I will begin with you, sir.
Coal does remain, in the pink of health as of now.
Okay.
And there are certainly technological disruptions which we have to watch out for. But keeping that aside, I think coal will continue to grow, and I'm sure Coal India will continue to prosper and will ensure that the country gets quantity and quality both. Apart from that, something very significant which we've been thinking about very seriously is opening up of the coal sectors. Interestingly, coal is one of the last sectors which does remain a public sector preserve. It was the Act of 2015 which brought about this provision that private companies can also mine coal for sale. We are seriously looking at it, and we expect to open up the sector very soon.
If you look at the history of this country, the last time privatization happened in coal mining, I remember I'm talking about really long time ago. Those days there happened a lot of issues surrounding accidents, for example, because it was generally the belief that private sector would come in and will kind of ignore safety kind of issues. So what are the ways in which we can ensure that that same thing is not repeated?
I think I totally agree with you there that when nationalization took place, there was a reason for nationalization.
74, I think, yeah.
Yes. 73 it happened, and there were good reasons. There were small mines, production was not very large. There were safety issues, there were technological issues in the sense of the way that the extraction was taking place.
So are we taking all the precautions now?
You see, when we open up mining, we intend to invite the best in the world to participate in these auctions. And there would obviously be significant and stringent checks, but more important, the kind of companies that we are looking for are established, reputed companies which have a good track record.
And how would you ensure that some kind of net worth criteria?
Exactly.
Okay.
Some pre-qualification.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. Sunil, how do you respond to that question? I intend to ask all of you.
Well, if you see the energy per capita consumption, yesterday I was reading rather Kuljit's one of the slides, and he said the per capita consumption is 1,000 unit. And if we take development of America as a base, we have to go at least 15,000 units. So you can't build your economics based on Bhagwan. You have to have that human ability and human approach. And
Yeah,
coal
what is required is a mix of
Exactly.
everything to
Coal
get the
will
best
be
benefits.
required.
Yeah.
Coal
Okay.
will be the problem which I see again.
Okay.
I'm a bit straightforward there.
No,
and
that's
probably
okay.
against-
But very briefly, yeah.
Very briefly, as it's very hearty to say. I'm saying it's very exciting to see that government is moving towards opening up the sector.
Yeah.
But till the time government remains the player as well as a referee, the real color doesn't comes up. I was born in coal sector. When you're talking about 74, I was born in 81. But my father I was born in Jharia. I have seen how it has gone from stages to stages. And the real problem which I see, for the sector not flourishing to the maximum level, is the government being a referee as well as a player there.
No, I'm sure a proper policy will be framed, and everybody,
Exactly.
all the stakeholders
Exactly,
will be
you know.
given a chance to
Yeah.
put up, their views, put across their.
And we have mature democracy now, where
Yeah.
the law has got enough teeth now,
Yeah, of
which
course.
can handle.
Our sector
And-
was opened up.
Yeah.
We obviously put regulators there.
Yeah, yeah.
So all of this will obviously come.
Yeah.
It'll be a package deal.
What's your view, Shiva?
I would say that at least for another 30 years, coal will remain the biggest power producer in the country. And having said this, we need to see how we can leverage the technology in order to make that more environment friendly, more safe, and more productive. And we also have to take into account what Vivek mentioned, that the quality of the coal is not good. So can we have the power generation to harness the bad quality coal? We can't change the quality of the coal. We can wash it, of course, but then it involves cost. So can we have a technology to burn the existing coal? So the government need to invest in the new technologies for the mining as well as on the harnessing of the coal in the boilers. I think this is
talking about the washing part. We're looking for dry benefication.
yeah,
But because wet requires a lot of water.
water, exactly.
But
That
we
is
are not-
again a scarce commodity.
Yeah, but we are not finding the right technology for dry.
Yeah. Is there enough technology
So
available for
the
that?
government has to invest in R&D. It cannot simply come. So because
I think that brings us to another important topic of supercritical versus subcritical. I was recently reading a report by IEA, International Energy Agency, which talked about India's energy development, and they said that if you look at the kind of capacity addition that we are having in power, not a lot of supercritical plants are getting added. Is that really the case? I don't know. Kuljit, do you want to throw some light on that?
See, now there are a lot of supercritical projects which are being set up. So now that scenario has changed. See, earlier people were very reluctant to set up supercritical projects for the simple reason that subcritical projects were cheaper as far as capital costs were concerned, on rupees per rupees per megawatt basis. So clearly, if somebody had to invest less equity to set up the same capacity, they would do that. And coal, anyway, being subsidized in India, it was very, very cheap. So it did not make any sense to have an arbitrage on having a more expensive capital cost and a cheaper variable cost. That arbitrage did not really make any sense. But now with the impetus from the government, I think government has taken a lot of regulatory steps. There are specific provisions that the government have instituted in power purchase agreements, for instance, which penalize subcritical projects and really foster a lot of supercritical projects. So now things are different, but now unfortunately the new starts by private sector players have come to a standstill. So this policy initiative has come from the government, but going forward it will not have too much of an impact because there are no new power projects being set up by private sector players anymore. It's only the government which is setting up private sector, which is setting up power projects, and all of these power projects luckily are supercritical in nature today.
Mr. Baldwin, is that really the case? Do you?
Very right. He's right.
So, isn't that a problem and
You see,
a matter of concern?
the problem is, see, private sector by its very nature invests when the risks are minimal.
Yeah,
So it is the government which has to go forward and do it.
yeah,
That is what the government is doing. And when the market sentiment improves, when there is greater demand in the market, the private sector will also follow, I am sure.
I think there is one peculiar situation which is there as far as the coal sector is concerned, especially from an end user's perspective. See, government is following this strategy of making coal more and more expensive and really penalizing coal. I guess there is a lot of pressure because people realize that coal is a polluting fuel. But I think what is also happening is that the government is possibly could have invested more into ensuring that the coal sector itself and the end user plants using coal become more efficient and less polluting. So, to give you an instance, so there is a huge cess which is being collected at 400 rupees per ton. So, one would really like to see that huge amount of money which gets collected every year being used for the betterment of the coal-fired stations itself than being used for renewable energy or other forms of energy. For instance, I would really like to see if when the government has announced this FGD provision, for instance, why does it not simultaneously declare that a cost of the FGD will be funded out of the coal cess which has been imposed on the users of the coal? Because that will square off, because on one hand you are asking the users to make the coal more cleaner, and on the other hand you are saying, okay, I have collected this huge amount of tax revenue from you, I will use this
for your own
to
benefit.
ensuring that.
Yeah.
So, I think if we can have that, that will be great. So that is
point.
Okay, okay. So that's something the government can look at.
yes.
Yeah, certainly.
Must
We
look
have
at,
an open
okay.
mind. So
Because
certainly.
right now there is no policy. Right now the policy
Okay.
is that the private sector IPPs are expected to foot the bill of the FGD and then on top of that pay for the enhanced coal cess as well. That's the policy
That
right
makes
now.
it unviable.
That makes it
Absolutely.
unviable.
Doesn't it?
Okay.
You are double taxation.
That's right.
Okay. Finally, Kuljit, your view on the future of king coal in India?
See, if you looked at the long term, say 30 to 40 years, I think coal is in deep trouble, deep trouble.
Okay.
I think the issue is what happens in the short to medium term. I think that's where the debate is. So, in the short to medium term, it's really a function of one external factor, which is what's happening on the renewable energy front, storage, more efficient renewable energy technologies, what's happening on that, totally delinked from India. And the other is something which is within the control of Government of India as to what are the measures which Government of India itself undertakes for ensuring that coal becomes a viable fuel, considering all the environmental impact that coal has. So, is Government of India investing a lot into, let's say, carbon storage and capture? There are some projects, pilot projects which are being undertaken where Government of India is also a participatory in that, but they need to undertake more and more steps on that. If they undertake that step which makes coal as a less polluting fuel, then maybe the life of coal can be stretched in India. Otherwise, as I said, in the long term, I think coal is definitely in for a deep trouble.
Okay. With these words, I think we can bring this discussion to an end. And in the larger interest of coal as a less polluting fuel, I think that's the larger message we have got. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.